My brother did the unthinkable to his girlfriend. But when I reported him, my mom said, "Now I have to deal with legal bills because you couldn't handle watching him." I stayed silent, knowing when she saw the truth, everything would change. When my little brother was 10, he asked me why you couldn't just lie to people to get what you want if they'd never find out. I was 17 at the time and had no idea how the F to answer his question. But back then, I didn't really think it was a big deal. So I just laughed and told him to just not lie before shoving him out of my room so I could keep playing Minecraft with my friends. But from there, strange things started happening. One time I walked him to school, and he showed me this cool bird that he had killed by pouring rat poison into the bird feeder. He whipped it out of his pocket like it was no big deal. That's when I knew he was more than just quirky. I always blame myself for not telling our mom sooner, but looking back, I understand why. You see, she was working 2 jobs 7 days a week. And even with my paychecks, it was like no amount of money was ever enough. So the last thing I wanted was to give her one more thing to think about. Plus, I figured I was big bro, so I thought I could handle it. That same day, I bought the cheapest books I could find on parenting and practically swallowed them whole. I swear I had enough information to figure out how to grow a baby in my womb or something, but none of it was applicable to my brother, and that's when it started. A few weeks later, I brought him to the public pool. I swear I only took my eyes off of him for 5 seconds, but when I found him again, he was using all his strength to push against a closet and keep it closed. I walked over, and when I pushed him out of the way, a small 4-year-old girl walked out. I looked at Timmy, expecting to see some sort of guilt, or at least sadness for being caught. Instead, he just laughed. "You should have seen her face," he hollered, pointing at the girl who was so scared she was peeing herself right in the middle of the pool hall. When we got home, I realized we needed to have a serious conversation. But you never know how difficult it is to explain empathy to a child who sees it as a foreign concept until you actually do it. Then Timmy said something that sent chills down my spine. If it was wrong, why was it so easy? That's when I had to end the conversation because it was simply too much. I never stopped trying though. I put in more hours at work just so I could bring him to therapy and signed him up for rugby so he would have something to channel his stuff into. I really thought it was working, because I wasn't getting calls about his teachers reporting him anymore, and he even had a few friends. But just when I thought the storm had passed, his therapist called me. She told me she needed me to come in as urgently as I could and to keep it a secret from Timmy. I left work early and made the 30-minute drive in 20. My head was spinning. When I walked into the room, her eyes were widened and the color was drained from her face. She had been working this job for 15 years, so I couldn't understand how Timmy had said something to bamboozle her this hard. She explained that at first, Timmy had been saying all the right things during their sessions. He'd even cry sometimes, but during the last session, his 30th one, something changed. Out of pride, he accidentally let it slip that he had figured out exactly what she wanted to hear. My stomach twisted so much I thought I was going to vomit. He hadn't been getting better, he'd been getting smarter. The therapist continued and told me I ought to be very concerned because his ability to manipulate has grown sharper and more calculated. By this point, he was 14 years old, so I assumed it was early enough that he couldn't do any real damage yet. When I got home, Timmy ran up to me with a huge smile on his face. Adam, look." He whipped out his phone and showed me a photo of a girl who looked around his age. I just bagged her. "She's so beautiful." When I looked into his eyes, I saw genuine adoration, one that I thought you couldn't fake. I thought back to when I was his age, how crazy I was before I talked to a girl for the first time, before my first kiss. To me, it all made sense, but I had to be sure. So I asked if I could meet her. "Yes, I want to show her off to the whole world," he said. I wasn't exactly sure what meeting her would do or what I was looking for, but I just knew I needed to be involved in some way. Well, she ended up coming over for dinner that weekend. Our mom wasn't home, so I cooked us my famous-ish chicken Alfredo. She had jet black hair, dressed a little goth. She was a lot quieter than Timmy, but she smiled a lot. After dinner, she offered to clean up, but I told her she could spend the rest of the evening with Timmy, and they rushed upstairs to his bedroom with the door open. Not even 10 minutes later, I heard Isabella scream. I ran upstairs as quietly as I could, and what I saw was disgusting. Isabella's eyes were wide open, and her arms were pinned down to the bed. All of her clothes were completely torn, and there were tears streaming down her face. I kicked Timmy out and gave Isabella some of our mom's clothes to change into before driving her home. She told me she wanted to press charges, her voice shaking but determined, and I agreed. The realization of what happened hit me like a truck. Timmy wasn't just a monster. He wasn't just manipulating Isabella or his friends. He was manipulating our entire family, and he was good at it. Really good. "Mom, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady when she finally came home that night. "I know this is hard to hear, but Timmy isn't who you think he is. The things he's done, enough," she snapped, holding up her hand. "I'm working 60 hours a week to keep this family afloat, and now I have to deal with legal bills because you couldn't handle watching your brother for a few hours. I can't do this right now, Adam." She walked away, shoulders slumped with exhaustion, and I felt a stab of guilt. She didn't deserve any of this, but neither did Isabella. That night, I heard Mom crying in her room, muffled sobs through the thin walls. I wanted to go comfort her, but what could I say? That her youngest son was showing all the signs of being a sociopath? That I'd failed to protect a young girl from him? That things were probably going to get worse before they got better? I lay in bed staring at the ceiling when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "This is Isabella's mom. The detective wants to meet with us tomorrow at 4. Can you come?" I texted back immediately. "I'll be there." The next morning, Timmy acted like nothing was wrong. He ate his cereal, scrolling through his phone, occasionally smirking at something on the screen. When Mom left for work, barely saying goodbye to me, he looked up with that same cold smile. "She believes me, you know," he said casually, milk dripping from his spoon. "About you being jealous. About Isabella lying." I ignored him and grabbed my keys. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice too innocent. "Work." I lied. I actually had the day off, but I needed to do some digging without him watching my every move. At the public library, I used a computer to search through Timmy's social media accounts. Most of what I found seemed normal on the surface. Photos with friends, posts about rugby matches, typical teenage stuff. But looking closer, I noticed patterns. The same 5 or 6 kids always commenting, always praising him. The way he positioned himself in the center of every photo. The calculated nature of each post. I created a folder and started taking screenshots of anything that seemed off. At 3:45, I pulled into the police station parking lot. Isabella and her parents were already there, along with a woman in a blazer who introduced herself as Detective Moreau. "Thank you for coming, Adam," she said, leading us to a small conference room. "We're still building our case, but Isabella's statement and the evidence you provided give us a good foundation." Isabella looked different today. Her makeup was gone, and she wore a simple hoodie and jeans. She seemed smaller somehow, but there was determination in her eyes when she glanced at me. Detective Moreau laid out what would happen next. The district attorney would review the case and decide whether to file charges. If they did, there would be a hearing. "Because Timmy is a juvenile, the process works differently," she explained. "The focus is more on rehabilitation than punishment." Isabella's father, Mr. Perez, leaned forward, his jaw tight. "So he just gets a slap on the wrist after what he did to my daughter?" "Not necessarily," Detective Moreau said. "The judge will consider the severity of the offense, any prior history, and recommendations from mental health professionals. In cases like this, there could be mandatory counseling, probation, community service, or even placement in a juvenile facility." I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Timmy needed help. Real help. Not the kind he could manipulate his way through, but I also knew this would tear our family apart. "There's something else you should know," I said, pulling out my phone. "I found these notes on Timmy's phone. He's been keeping track of how to manipulate different people, classmates, teachers, even me and our mom." Detective Moreau reviewed the screenshots, her expression, grave. "This shows premeditation and a pattern of behavior. It's concerning." When the meeting ended, Isabella hung back as her parents walked ahead to the car. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing me, for helping." "I'm so sorry this happened to you," I replied, guilt washing over me. "I should have seen the signs sooner." She shook her head. "It's not your fault. He had everyone fooled." When I got home, Mom was at the kitchen table with red-rimmed eyes, her uniform still on from her shift. Timmy was nowhere to be seen. "The school called," she said, her voice hollow. "They've suspended Timmy pending the investigation. His rugby coach called too. He's off the team." I sat down across from her. "Mom, I know this is hard." "Hard?" she interrupted, her voice cracking. "My 14-year-old son is being accused of assault. I could lose my job if I keep taking time off for meetings with lawyers and police. And my older son, who I trusted to help me raise him, is helping build a case against him instead of standing by his family." Her words stung, but I held my ground, the memory of Isabella's tears still fresh. "Mom, I am standing by my family, but what Timmy did was wrong, and it's not the first time he's hurt someone." I told her everything. The bird, the incident at the pool, the therapist's warnings. With each story, her face crumpled a little more. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, hands trembling. "You were already carrying so much," I said, guilt gnawing at me. "I thought I could handle it. I thought the therapy was working." She buried her face in her hands. "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing," I assured her. "Some people are just wired differently. It's not your fault." We sat in silence for a long moment before she looked up. "What happens now?" "The DA will decide whether to file charges. If they do, there will be a hearing." She nodded slowly. "I need to find him a good lawyer, someone who understands juvenile cases." I hesitated. "Mom, Timmy needs help. Real help, not just someone to get him off the hook. He's my son, Adam," she said firmly. "I'm not going to throw him to the wolves." The next few weeks were tense. Mom found a lawyer named Gregory Thompson who specialized in juvenile cases. She took out a loan to pay his retainer, adding another burden to her already strained finances. Timmy spent most of his time in his room, only coming out for meals. He was quieter now, more watchful. I caught him staring at me sometimes with an expression I couldn't read, his eyes calculating. The district attorney decided to file charges, sexual assault and false imprisonment. Because Timmy was a juvenile, they were handling it in family court rather than criminal court. The hearing was set for 3 weeks away. Meanwhile, I was getting strange texts from numbers I didn't recognize. "Why are you lying about your brother? Leave Timmy alone. You're going to regret this." I showed them to Detective Moreau, who said they'd look into it. But there wasn't much they could do unless the messages contained specific threats. At school, things were getting weird too. Former friends stopped talking to me. I overheard whispers in the hallway. Someone spray-painted snitch on my locker. The red letters dripping like blood. One day after my shift at work, I came home to find Timmy sitting on the couch with two guys I didn't recognize. One was tall and lanky with a buzz cut, Kyle, according to the rugby jersey he wore. The other was shorter with a permanent sneer. This one Timmy introduced as James. "These are my friends," Timmy said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "They wanted to meet my big brother." Something about the way they looked at me made my skin crawl. I nodded at them and headed upstairs, but I could feel their eyes on my back, heavy and threatening. That night, I woke up to the sound of something hitting my window. I got up and looked outside, but there was nothing there. When I turned back to my bed, I noticed my backpack had been moved, the zipper partially open. I checked inside. My wallet was there, but when I opened it, all my cash was gone. About $80 I'd been saving for a new game, vanished. I stormed into Timmy's room, flipping on the light. "Where is it?" I demanded. He blinked up at me innocently, his face soft with fake sleep. "Where's what?" "My money. I know you took it." He sat up, looking offended. "I didn't take anything. Maybe you spent it and forgot." "Cut the crap, Timmy. Give it back." He shrugged, spreading his hands. "Search my room if you want. You won't find anything." I did search, but of course, the money was gone. When I went back to my room, I noticed something else. The folder where I'd been keeping copies of evidence was missing from my desk drawer. The next day, I installed a simple lock on my bedroom door. It wasn't much, but it was something. As the hearing approached, Timmy's behavior became more erratic. Sometimes he'd be almost like his old self, laughing, joking, helping Mom with chores. Other times, I'd catch him staring into space with that cold, calculating look. His friends were over more often, always watching me, always whispering. 3 days before the hearing, I came home from work to find Mom at the kitchen table, her face ashen, a letter clutched in her hand. It was from her boss. She was being let go due to excessive absences and declining performance. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered, her voice breaking. "How are we going to pay the rent? The lawyer?" I sat down next to her. "I'll pick up more shifts. We'll figure it out." "Timmy says it's because of the stress from all this. She said that if you hadn't pushed for charges, I wouldn't have had to miss so much work." I bit back my first response. "Mom, that's not fair. I didn't cause this situation." She sighed, shoulders slumping. "I know. I'm tired, Adam. So tired." That night, I heard Timmy on the phone in his room. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone was animated, almost excited. When I passed his door on the way to the bathroom, he quickly ended the call. "Who is that?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Just Kyle," he said, his face a perfect mask of innocence. "We're working on a project together." I didn't believe him, but I was too exhausted to press the issue. The morning of the hearing, I woke up early. Mom was already in the kitchen, making pancakes, Timmy's favorite. He sat at the table in a button-up shirt and khakis, looking like the perfect innocent teenager. "Morning," I said, pouring myself some coffee. Mom gave me a tight smile. "Mr. Thompson said we should be at the courthouse by 9. I nodded. "I'll drive separately. I have work after." Timmy looked up. His fork paused midway to his mouth. "You're not coming to support me?" The audacity almost made me laugh. "I'm testifying, Timmy, for Isabella." His eyes hardened for a split second before he composed himself. "Right. Of course you are." At the courthouse I saw Isabella and her parents sitting on a bench outside the hearing room. She looked up as I approached, and I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "How are you holding up?" I asked, noticing the way she twisted a silver ring around her finger. "Nervous," she admitted, "but I'm ready." Inside, the hearing room was smaller than I expected. Timmy sat with his lawyer, looking appropriately somber. Mom sat directly behind him, her back rigid with tension. The judge, an older woman named Judge Harper, called the hearing to order. The prosecutor presented the case against Timmy, showing the text messages, the torn clothes, and called Isabella to testify. Isabella's voice shook at first, but grew stronger as she described what happened. How Timmy had invited her over. How he'd seemed so nice until they were alone. How he'd suddenly changed and attacked her. Timmy's lawyer cross-examined her, suggesting that she'd misinterpreted Timmy's actions, that they were just fooling around, and things got out of hand. Isabella held firm, her voice steady, despite the tears in her eyes. When it was my turn to testify, I described finding Isabella in Timmy's room, her clothes torn, the fear in her eyes. I talked about the pattern of behavior I'd observed over the years, the bird, the incident at the pool, the therapist's warnings. Mr. Thompson tried to paint me as resentful, suggesting I was jealous of Timmy and wanted to get him in trouble. I stayed calm, sticking to the facts, though my hands shook beneath the table. The most surprising testimony came from Timmy's former therapist, Dr. Rivera. She described how Timmy had initially seemed responsive to therapy, but how she'd eventually realized he was simply telling her what she wanted to hear. "In my professional opinion," she said, "Timothy shows concerning signs of conduct disorder with callous and unemotional traits. He understands right from wrong intellectually, but lacks the emotional capacity to care about the harm he causes others." When Timmy took the stand, he was the picture of remorse. His voice cracked as he described how much he liked Isabella, how they'd been kissing and things went too far, how he never meant to scare her. "I made a mistake," he said, looking directly at the judge with tears in his eyes. "I've learned my lesson. I just want to make things right." It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed him myself. After all the testimony, Judge Harper called a recess to consider her decision. We all filed out into the hallway. Mom went to talk to Mr. Thompson, while I found a quiet corner to collect my thoughts. A few minutes later, Isabella approached me. "Do you think the judge believed him?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted. "He's very convincing." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "Even knowing what he did, part of me still wants to believe him when he looks at me like that." "Is that crazy?" "No," I said. "That's exactly why he's dangerous." When the judge called us back in, the room was tense with anticipation. Judge Harper looked at Timmy for a long moment before speaking. "Timothy," she said, "I've considered all the testimony and evidence in this case. While I acknowledge your youth and the potential for rehabilitation, I cannot ignore the seriousness of your actions or the concerning pattern of behavior described by multiple witnesses." She found him responsible for the charges and ordered him to be placed on probation for 2 years with mandatory therapy, community service, and no contact with Isabella. She also recommended a psychological evaluation to determine if more intensive intervention was needed. Isabella looked relieved, though her parents seemed disappointed it wasn't more severe. As we left the courthouse, Timmy walked ahead with Mom and Mr. Thompson. I hung back, not wanting to deal with them right now. Isabella's dad approached me. "Thank you for your testimony. It couldn't have been easy going against your brother." "It wasn't," I admitted, "but it was the right thing to do." That night, dinner was silent. Mom picked at her food while Timmy ate normally, as if nothing had happened. After dinner, he disappeared into his room without helping clean up. As I was washing dishes, Mom leaned against the counter. "The psychologist wants to see him tomorrow," she said, "to start the evaluation." I nodded. "That's good. Maybe they can help him." She sighed. "I hope so. I don't understand how we got here." Later that night, I was almost asleep when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think this is over? It's just beginning. Sleep tight, big brother." I stared at the screen, a chill running down my spine. I knew without a doubt it was from Timmy, though I couldn't prove it. The next morning, Timmy was gone before I woke up. Mom said she'd taken him to his appointment with the psychologist and then to school, where he was allowed to return on a probationary basis. I had the day off, so I decided to use the time to look for a second job. We needed the money now more than ever, the stack of bills on the counter growing taller each day. As I was searching online, I got a call from Isabella, her voice tight with panic. "Adam, something weird is happening. People at school are saying I made everything up about Timmy, that I'm just trying to get attention." "What? Who's saying that?" I asked, sitting up straighter. "Everyone. There are posts all over social media. Someone even made a fake account in my name, posting things that make it look like I'm admitting I lied." I felt a surge of anger. "It's Timmy or his friends. Can you screenshot everything and send it to me?" I already did. I sent it all to Detective Moreau too. After we hung up, I checked my own social media. Sure enough, there were posts circulating about how Isabella was a known liar who had made up stories about other guys too. Some posts even suggested I had a weird obsession with Isabella, and had put her up to accusing Timmy because I was jealous of him. It was a coordinated smear campaign, and it was working. Comments were flooding in, people taking sides, most believing the lies because they were salacious and spread by popular kids. I called Detective Moreau to report what was happening, but she said that while it was concerning, it wasn't technically illegal unless it crossed into direct threats or harassment. When Timmy came home from school, he was smiling, a spring in his step. He didn't mention the social media posts, and neither did I, but we both knew what was happening. That night, I heard him on the phone again, laughing with his friends about how people will believe anything if enough people say it. I recorded the conversation through his door, making sure to get the part where he said, next week, everyone will think Isabella is the psycho, not me." The next day, I sent the recording to Detective Moreau and Isabella. It wasn't much, but it was something. What I didn't expect was for things to escalate so quickly. By the end of the week, Isabella had stopped going to school because of the harassment. Someone had spray-painted liar on her locker. Her social media accounts were flooded with hateful messages. And it wasn't just Isabella. My reputation was taking a hit too. Former friends avoided me in the hallways. Someone slashed the tires on my car. Anonymous accounts were posting that I had a history of making up stories about people. Timmy, meanwhile, was thriving. His friends rallied around him. Teachers who had once been wary now seemed sympathetic, viewing him as the victim of false accusations despite the court's finding. One afternoon, I came home to find Mom at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. "What's all that?" I asked, dropping my backpack. "Bills," she said flatly. "Lawyer fees, psychologist appointments, and now the school is suggesting Timmy might benefit from a special behavioral program. It costs money we don't have." I sat down across from her. "I got that second job at the movie theater. It should help." She gave me a tired smile. "You shouldn't have to do this, Adam. You're only 21. You should be focusing on college, not working 2 jobs to support us." "It's fine, Mom." "Really?" I said, though my shoulders ached from double shifts and my grades were slipping. She looked at me for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "I spoke with Dr. Winters, Timmy's new psychologist today. He said something that's been bothering me." I waited, feeling a knot form in my stomach. He asked if Timmy has always been so skilled at getting people to do what he wants. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit she'd never broken even years after Dad left. And I realized, he has. Even as a little boy, he could charm his way out of trouble, make people feel special when he wanted something. "Mom, I didn't want to see it," she continued, her voice catching. What kind of mother doesn't see that her child is? She trailed off. Unable to finish the thought, I reached across the table and took her hand. You were working non-stop. You trusted me to help, and I failed too. She squeezed my hand. No, Adam. You tried. You've always tried. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Mom had said, about how Timmy had always been manipulative. It wasn't just the big incidents I'd noticed. It was a lifetime of small manipulations that had seemed innocent at the time. I got up and opened my laptop, creating a new document. I started typing everything I could remember. Every incident, every warning sign, every manipulation. The bird, the incident at the pool, the therapist's warnings, Isabella, the social media campaign, all of it. By morning, I had 12 pages of detailed notes. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them, but it felt important to have it all in one place, a record of truth against the lies. At breakfast, Timmy was in rare form, chatting animatedly about a rugby match he'd been invited to watch with his friends. Coach says I might be able to rejoin the team next semester if my probation officer gives the okay, he said, mouthful of cereal. Oh, and I need $20 for the movies tonight, he added casually. I don't have extra cash right now, Timmy, Mom said, her voice firmer than usual. His face darkened for a split second before he recovered. But you said I could go. Everyone's counting on me. It's fine, I interrupted, pulling a 20 from my wallet. Here, Timmy grinned, snatching the bill. Thanks bro, you're the best. After he left for school, Mom looked at me questioningly. Why did you do that? I shrugged. It's easier than dealing with his tantrum. She frowned. That's enabling him, Adam. I know, but I'm working on something. Later that day, I met with Isabella at a coffee shop across town. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. I've been thinking about all this, the social media stuff, the harassment. It's not just about me, is it? She said. What do you mean? I think Timmy's done this before. Made someone a target. She showed me screenshots of conversations with other girls. Their stories were disturbingly similar. Timmy would charm them, then turn cruel when he didn't get what he wanted, using his social network to isolate and harass them. None of them spoke up because they were afraid, Isabella said, but they're willing to now, if it helps stop him. I showed her my document. I've been compiling everything I can remember too. All the warning signs. All the incidents. She read through it, her expression growing more troubled with each page. This is a lot worse than I thought. I know. And I don't know what to do with it. The court already made their decision. The school doesn't seem to care as long as he's not causing problems on campus. Isabella was quiet for a moment. What if we don't go through official channels? What if we just tell the truth to everyone? What do you mean? Social media works both ways. If Timmy can use it to spread lies, we can use it to spread the truth. The idea was simple, but powerful. We would create a document with all our evidence, my observations over the years, Isabella's experience, the stories from other girls, screenshots of Timmy's manipulative messages, and share it with everyone at school. It's risky, I warned. Timmy's friends might retaliate. Isabella's jaw set in determination. I'm already a social outcast. What more can they do to me? We spent the next week gathering evidence and testimonies. 5 more girls came forward with stories about Timmy. 2 of his former friends provided screenshots of group chats where he'd bragged about manipulating people. Even his first therapist, Dr. Rivera, provided a carefully worded statement about recognizing signs of manipulation in adolescence. We compiled everything into a single document, careful to stick to verifiable facts and first-hand accounts. No speculation, no exaggeration, just the truth. The night before we planned to share it, I sat in my room staring at my laptop screen, my finger hovering over the send button. Was I really going to do this to my own brother? Was it the right thing? I thought about Isabella, too afraid to go to school. About the young girl at the pool, terrified to the point of wetting herself. About the dead bird, called for no reason other than Timmy's curiosity. I hit send. The document went to everyone in our school email directory, students, teachers, administrators. I also sent it to Timmy's probation officer, his current psychologist, and Detective Moreau. I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop with notifications. The document had spread like wildfire. People were sharing it, commenting on it, reaching out to Isabella and the other girls to offer support. Timmy wasn't at breakfast. Mom said he'd left early, claiming he had a study group. But I knew better. He was doing damage control, trying to contain what couldn't be contained anymore. At school, the atmosphere was electric. People were talking in hushed voices, looking at their phones, glancing at me as I walked past. Some looked sympathetic, others confused or skeptical, but no one was ignoring it. Isabella texted me during third period. It's working. People are listening. By lunch, Timmy's carefully constructed social network was crumbling. His closest friends were distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with what was now being called Timmy's pattern. The girls who had come forward were surrounded by supportive classmates. I didn't see Timmy all day, but I knew he'd be waiting at home. I braced myself for the confrontation as I pulled into our driveway. He was sitting on the front steps, his face a mask of cold fury. "You think you've won?" he said as I approached, his voice eerily calm. "But you have no idea what you've done." I told the truth, Timmy. That's all. He laughed, a hollow chilling sound. The truth? No one cares about the truth. They care about what's entertaining, what makes them feel superior. And right now, that's watching me fall. You did this to yourself, I said, moving past him toward the door. He grabbed my arm. This isn't over. You think you know me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I pulled away from him. Actually, I do. That's the point. Inside, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of her. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. You wrote this? She asked, gesturing to the screen where our document was displayed. I nodded. Isabella helped. And some others. Why didn't you tell me you were going to do this? Would you have let me? She was quiet for a moment. Probably not. She closed the laptop. Timmy's probation officer called, and his psychologist. They both want to meet tomorrow. I'm sorry it had to be this way, Mom. She shook her head. Don't be. I've been in denial for too long. That night, Timmy didn't come home for dinner. Mom called his friends, but no one had seen him. We were about to call the police when he finally walked in around midnight, smelling of cigarettes and looking defiant. Where have you been? Mom demanded, rising from the couch where she'd been waiting. Out, he said flatly. Thinking. We were worried sick, he laughed, the sound brittle. No, you weren't. You were worried about what I might do, not about me. Mom flinched. That's not true, Timmy. I love you. Whatever. He headed for the stairs. I'm going to bed. The next morning, Mom took Timmy to meet with his probation officer and psychologist. I stayed home, too exhausted to face another day of whispers and stares at school. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Detective Moreau. Adam, I've been reviewing the document you shared, she said. This is concerning material. I've spoken with the district attorney, and they're considering whether additional charges are warranted based on the new testimonies. What does that mean for Timmy? I asked, pacing the living room. It's too early to say, but his current probation terms will likely be re-evaluated, possibly with more restrictive conditions. After I hung up, I sat on the couch, feeling strangely empty. This was what I'd wanted, for people to see the truth about Timmy, for him to face consequences. So why didn't it feel like a victory? Mom and Timmy returned late in the afternoon. Mom looked drained but resolute. A new determination in her step. Timmy wouldn't look at either of us. Go to your room, Timmy, Mom said quietly. I need to talk to Adam. After he trudged upstairs, Mom sat beside me on the couch. They're recommending residential treatment, she said. A facility that specializes in adolescents with conduct disorders, minimum 6 months, possibly longer. I nodded slowly. That sounds good. He needs help, Mom. Real help. I know. She took a deep breath. I've agreed to it. He's being admitted tomorrow. How did he take it? Not well. He tried to manipulate the situation, but Dr. Winters saw right through it. She gave a sad smile. Your document helped them understand what they're dealing with. The next day, we drove Timmy to the treatment facility. It was nicer than I expected, more like a boarding school than a hospital, with green lawns and brick buildings. Timmy was silent during the drive, staring out the window with a blank expression. As we walked him to the intake area, he finally spoke. This won't change anything, you know, he said quietly. You can't fix me. Mom squeezed his shoulder. This isn't about fixing you, Timmy. It's about helping you learn to live in the world without hurting people. He shrugged off her hand. Whatever helps you sleep at night. After he was checked in, Mom and I stood in the parking lot, both emotionally drained. Did we do the right thing? She asked, hugging herself against the chill. I think so, I said. He needs more help than we can give him. On the drive home, Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Adam, for being brave enough to do what I couldn't. Over the next few months, things slowly improved. Isabella returned to school, surrounded by a supportive group of friends. The harassment stopped as Timmy's influence faded. The girls who had come forward formed a support group that met weekly. Mom found a new job that paid better and had more regular hours. I cut back to one job and started taking classes at the community college. We visited Timmy every weekend. Sometimes the visits went well. He'd talk about his therapy, the books he was reading, the activities they did. Other times he was cold and distant, refusing to engage. 4 months into his stay, Timmy asked to speak with me alone during a visit. You ruined everything, he said once Mom had left the room. My life was perfect before you interfered. Your life was built on hurting people. I replied. That's not perfect, Timmy. That's just sad. He studied me for a long moment. You really believe that, don't you? That what you did was right? Yes, I do. He nodded slowly. Interesting. The therapists keep saying the same thing, that hurting people isn't the way to get what I want, that there are better ways. Do you believe them? He shrugged. I don't know, but I'm starting to think it might be worth trying their way. It seems to work for you. It wasn't an epiphany or a breakthrough, just a small crack in the wall he'd built around himself. But it was something, a tiny glimmer of possibility. 6 months turned into 8, then 10. Timmy's progress was slow but steady. The residential program extended his stay, and Mom agreed, seeing the benefit of the structured environment and consistent therapy. By the time he was finally cleared to come home, almost a year had passed. He was different, quieter, more thoughtful, less quick to charm. I didn't fully trust the change, but I wanted to believe it was real. The night before he came home, Mom and I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset. Are you nervous? She asked. A little, I admitted. Are you? She nodded, but also hopeful. The therapists say he's made real progress. I guess we'll see. She put her arm around me. Whatever happens, we'll face it together this time. No more secrets. No more trying to handle everything on your own. Deal, I said, leaning into her embrace. The weight on my shoulders lighter than it had been in years. I don't know what the future holds for Timmy, Maybe the treatment worked, and he'll learn to live without manipulating and hurting others. Maybe he'll just get better at hiding it. Either way, I know now that staying silent only allows the damage to spread, like poison seeping into groundwater. Sometimes doing the right thing feels terrible. Sometimes it costs you more than you thought you could bear. But in the end, the truth is all we have, and sometimes it's enough.